What's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of Crush Live Call-ins. I'm your host here, Bart Hanson, and we do this show every single Monday at 4:45 Pacific time. I got a text from my social media person. I guess Instagram went down for a second there. Huh, that's kind of interesting. But anyways, yeah, 4:45. What is it, January 28th? This time next week, I will be lamenting about how the Patriots have won their sixth Super Bowl. As always, we preload these calls. So if you do want to be on the show, you can email me, bart@crushlivepoker.com, bart@crushlivepoker.com, or if you are a CLP member, you can hit me up on Slack, send me a PM with the hand in question. We've got 6 hands here for today, so let's get into it right away here. Of course, I will be in the live chat here as well. Let's go to Athen here, who's going to be our first caller. What's up, Athen?
Hey, how you doing, Bart? Can you
Good.
hear me?
Yep.
Excellent, excellent. So, playing the 5-5 game. I'm from the East Coast, but sometimes I'm West, and I was in the Commerce actually playing 5-5.
So 500 cap, right? If it's a commerce.
That's correct.
Okay.
500 cap. That's
Yep.
correct.
Mhm.
I'm sitting with about 900. Villain, the main villain in the hand is sitting with about 500.
Okay.
He's directly to my right.
Okay.
He's a lag with a wide range. He's a middle-aged gentleman, and he tilts easily. And so I would say his VPIP over the last bunch of hands is probably about 50. His PFR was probably 35. And
Now,
he was getting a little bit heated.
I've said this before. You're not going to see, and some people will disagree with me, but especially with the way that LA is set up with their game structures, you're not going to see a good lag player at 5-5 ever. If a person was a good lag player, they wouldn't be playing 5-5. It's tough to be a good lag player in the 9-handed format anyways, but they're certainly not going to be playing 5-5. So right away, if you say he's lag, then I would say a 99% chance that he's a losing player for the background.
And that's exactly what was happening.
Yeah,
he was
yeah.
leaking chips at that point, and
Yeah.
so this was the spot we wanted to be in, no
Okay.
doubt about it.
Okay.
The way the table was playing the dynamic, it was full. It was a full ring. Directly to my right was this gentleman, and directly to my left was a loose, not quite as aggressive, a little bit more passive player. Everyone was playing around those two.
Okay.
Those were where the dead money was. And so in this case, the villains directly to my right opens from MP1 to 25.
Okay.
I have King of Spades, 10 of Spades, obviously an MP2. I thought about 3-betting at this point. Partially my thought was, one, even though, King of Spades, 10 of Spades, not an outstanding hand, I was ahead of his range here, and it plays pretty well. Number two, dragging in the other donk into the hand as well, who was not aggressive. The table was not 3-betting a lot.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I mean, here's the thing. Like, I'm in the middle of this 5-5 challenge here. Well, at least the 5-5 games I play with 1K effective. You do definitely promote yourself and promote your hand if you get position over the field, if you 3-bet. But the problem is that if you were to make it like 85, I'm not saying that whether it's good or bad, but, and let's say the guy calls, you're in a really weird spot post flop with stacks. So that's sort of like the catch-22 that you sort of play in this particular scenario. But certainly for a guy that's like raising way too much and you're not in absolute position on the rest of the field, I would be doing a fair amount of 3-betting. I would like some more stack depth. But okay, you call. Then what happens behind you?
So behind me, it actually, I think, folded all the way through behind me at that point.
So your head's up.
So I think we were heads up at that point, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And so the flop comes out, 9 of spades, 8 of spades, 8 of clubs. So, we flop the flush draw and the backdoor straight draw as well.
Okay.
So a pretty good flop against somebody like this.
Yep.
He leads out for 30. And we decided to flat at that point. I thought about raising, of course, on the flop. Part of my thought about not raising was, number one, it a little bit turns our hand face up to either, what I think he would perceive as either a flush draw or maybe the kind of hand, kind of like wired with like a middle or small pocket pair or something in that range. I don't
I
think he'd likely think we're raising.
again, I
Go
mean,
ahead.
because the stacks are weird. I mean, normally I wouldn't raise; I would just call. But when you're against a player like this, I actually don't mind raising some of your hands that don't have a ton of showdown value if they don't hit. So, like if you had
Yeah.
an ace high flush draw, maybe you might call. But king 10, you do have some backdoors. I mean, it's sort of a raise for protection. You're not going to get anything. You're not going to get him to fold really anything really better except for like some random ace highs. But if he's
Mhm.
sort of going to spaz bet turn quite a bit, and you have a lot of equity in your hand, and he's just a button clicker, sometimes you actually can benefit from raising right now. I mean, no one's going to bet three bet you all in. I mean, you're never going to be faced really with a bet three bet unless you think he's full of shit, and you might even just jam because he would only be representing an eight. But this is how bad these guys are. Like if you're talking about playing a lag that's 5-5, like if he bet 30 and I made it like 85, and then he made it like 185. The problem is that your stacks are too weird for that shit. But I've just seen people just button click like crazy. So I can actually see raising or calling. Usually I would call, but with stack depth I could see raising sometimes. But you call.
I did call.
Okay.
And so the turn broke the eight of diamonds. So, now we got three eights on board. He checked at that point. My thought was, if he either had a pocket pair or if he had trips on the flop, I see no reason why he wouldn't continue with the stack depth that we had. He wasn't clueless. He wasn't a complete donk. He was just a little too open and leaking. So my thought is he'd continue at that point. He decided to check. At which point I bet at that point to obviously to steal. I bet 85,
Yeah, I don't know if I'm
and
a
he
huge fan.
stalled.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure if I'm a huge fan of that because I don't know if you're gonna get his ace highs to fold all that much. I
Yeah.
mean, really, all you're trying to do is get. I mean, he's not gonna fold a pair. He's not betting quads either. By the way, he's gonna be checking quite a bit here. I mean, I think that the hands that he would bet would be like a hand like tens, jacks, queens, stuff like that that needs a little bit of protection and stuff. But um, I would probably rather check this back and then see what he does at the end and try to play it like, if you go check, check, and the river's a break and he checks again, you can just put out like kind of a small bet at the end, and
Mhm.
it's going to be tough for him to call, I feel like. But I don't know. I mean, you might get him off of like ace three, ace four, things like that, but those types of hands aren't. I don't even know if those are checking. So I'm not a huge fan of this bet. I'm also not a real big fan of this sizing. I mean, the pot's 110. If you want to just make like a bet to get him off of like king jack ace high, you could bet like 45 50, something like this. You bet 85, and that's the weird thing with these stack sizes.
Yeah. Okay. So what happened is he, as I bet that out, he stalled, and I guess it. Well, I won't get to results, but he stalled and made it seem like he was kind of at ace high or so, right? So he thought he made it seem like he had some showdown value. I was on bust, I was on, spades or something like that, and so he flat, and that's when so he flats, and the river comes the king of hearts at that point.
Okay.
So given his range, given everything at that point, I have to think that we're pretty good at that point. And so he checked.
Right. Well,
And so I
yeah.
bet up pretty healthily is what happened.
Well, let's just do the bat math here real quick. So the pot is 50, 80, 110 plus 170. It's 280. It's like 275. The pot's like 275, and he has maybe what 350 left, approximately, if I'm doing it out of the top of my head. So, okay, so he checks. And what was your sizing?
I went reasonably big considering a stack. I went to 200.
So you bet 200 into like 250, something like that.
That's correct.
I mean, actually, at first glance, I was thinking that I would sort of just bet small, but you really do sort of, I don't know, like almost accidentally polarize yourself here. Like if he's got a nine or like pocket sevens or something like that, it's tough because a lot of people, when they use this sizing here on the river on a king, they really are only representing an eight, right? Or, I mean, they backed into a king. So it wouldn't surprise me if you actually get looked up by some sort of pair here. So I actually don't hate the play. My first inkling was to actually bet a little bit smaller, but I can get on board here with 200.
I was even thinking he might call down, make a hero call with ace high,
I think
considering
that's
he
a little
thought we might be on
optimistic,
busted
but
spades.
I mean,
Maybe,
ace high is sort of the same type of hand, but I just think it's a little bit optimistic. Um,
possibly, yeah.
yeah. So what happened?
You know, he check raises and all in. He ships.
So you bet 200, and he only has 150 left. Is that right?
Yeah, plus or minus. That's about right.
Well, you have to call though because he's going to do this with a king too, right? I mean, you're getting incredible pot odds. I'm not going to fold top boat here. If he's got pocket nines or an eight, so be it, or pocket aces. But I mean, you bet 200. We said that the pot was what, like 280, so that's 480, 680. It's like 830, 150 for you to call, right? I mean, even if you're just chopping at best, you're still getting almost 3-1. So he can easily
Right.
have ace king here.
Yeah. So the question is you know, is it 20% of the time that he has an eight or a pair of nines or greater, right? Something like that.
Yeah, but I mean,
Uh,
well, yeah, exactly. But I mean, you have to call a guy like this because he would just do this a lot with a king. I mean, he's not bluffing. I'm sure he's probably not bluffing, but if he's a spaz, maybe it is. But you do have to call here with the king for sure.
yeah. And that's what we did. And our pre-flop read was good, at least, as we were ahead. But he flipped over king eight suited. That's exactly what happened.
He had king eight suited. Wow, that's a shitty that's a shitty river for you. I mean,
It
that's a
sure is.
shitty river for you. I mean, if you had bet smaller and he had shipped and you were getting some sort of worse price, you could consider folding if there was like more stack depth, but
Yeah.
I don't think there's any way that you can fold here, given the price. So he had quads,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. He was so wide that I wasn't even concerned with him having an eight, to be honest with you. I mean, it was a very, very minuscule part of his range, anybody's range, let alone this guy's.
Wow.
So it was, the smaller bet sizing. You're right. In hindsight, if I bet 125, 150 for a value bet, I could have maybe gotten away from it. It just
Nah,
wasn't even a
I
concern at
still
that
I
point.
still don't think you can get away from it though. I mean, if the guy is a spaz, the interesting thing about the commerce, or the annoying thing, I don't really play that game, is that the rake is so high. I mean, the rake is the same as the bikes game that I'm doing the 5-5 challenge. It's the same as 5-10 at commerce. I think it might be 6+1, $7 a hand at
Yeah.
$500 cap, and the
Yeah.
place is a fucking zoo barn, especially during the LAPC now. It is you couldn't pay me to play on that side. I don't know if you've ever been there when it's so busy, but it's not an enjoyable experience. That's for sure.
It sure is
A-
crazy. It sure is crazy.
Athen, thanks for the call.
If I'm, oh, thank you.
All right, take it easy. 607. You are up next, sir.
Hey, Bart, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah. So I'll jump into the hand. This is a hand played in local card room in Seattle
Okay.
Friday night.
Okay.
So I was like 465, which was an effective stack considering the villain in this hand.
Okay.
There were some big stacks, but not involved in this hand.
Okay.
So there was one limp under the gun +2
Okay.
and cutoff raised to 20.
So is this a 2-5 game or what?
It's 1-2 game.
1-2 with what kind of cap?
Cap is like 500.
Oh,
So
okay.
basically, you can raise maximum 3 times. The cap is 500.
500 is the buy-in, or is that 500 plus street? You mean per street? This is weird things in
500.
Washington.
So max bet you can do in a raise is 500.
How much can you
So
buy
you
in
can
for?
do. So buy in like around 500 you can buy max.
Okay. Okay.
But nobody buys in that much. So
Right,
it's a
right.
1-3 game, not 1-2.
Oh, 1-3. Okay.
It's 1-3 game.
Okay. So plus 2 limps, cut off to 20. Yep.
Yeah. So I was here sitting at button with pocket jacks.
Okay.
So I decided to flat. The reason was small blind and big blind. Those guys were little aggro and they were raising with 3-betting with 7 deuce off.
Yeah.
Maybe they're trying to build the image, and they were also called squeezed me couple of hands before. So my reasoning was to keep their bad hands in, and if they try to squeeze, come over the top and pick up the pot on flop. Is that the right reasoning, or?
Well, yeah, I saw when you had emailed me that before. I mean, jacks, I probably wouldn't do that with just because, I mean, if you're saying that you're calling, it goes limp, cutoff makes it 20, you call with jacks because you feel like someone's going to back raise you, and then you're just going to get it all in for 465 with jacks. I mean, occasionally I might do that with aces, but to be perfectly honest with you, I mean, jacks is just always going to be better in this spot as a three bet to get it heads up. I'm not a huge fan of
Mhm.
that. I mean, unless you've got some sort of like crazy thing going
So
on
I
where a
was
guy is just
planning.
jamming all the time, he's drunk, and you just think in the blinds he's going to jam his stack in, or he's on super tilt and you want to do a trap or something, you know?
Yeah, I was not planning to jam if they try to three bet. I was planning to do four bet
Uh huh.
because those guys were like aggro, but as soon as somebody was showing aggression, they were backing down.
Okay,
So
so you call the button.
yeah, so I called the button.
Uh huh.
So in this case, both small and big called, and under the gun plus two also called.
Right.
So pot is 100. So flop was jack of hearts, four of hearts, three of clubs, giving us top set and two hearts on the board.
Jack of hearts, four of hearts, three of clubs.
Yeah, jack of
Okay.
hearts, four of hearts, three of clubs.
And there's one, two, three, four, five people, right, in the pot, including you. And you've got the button with a sort of a deceptive top set, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So it checked to pre-flop razor, which is cut off,
Yep.
and he made 40. So I want to keep like two pair flush draws in, but do not want to give free cards. So I raise it to 140. So is the betting bet size right, or I'm off here?
Well, I mean, here's the thing. Like, you can never go wrong by not slow playing um,
Mm-hmm.
in at the low levels. I mean, occasionally, like when you have like a really hidden top set here, you've got so much sort of like what they say is like you cover the board so much. And what I mean by that is that anyone who's not the preflop raiser that's going to give you action is going to have two pair plus, right? Not the preflop raiser, but the other people. And because you have three of the jacks in your hand,
Mm-hmm.
and this specific board sort of comes out, it's really difficult for them to have that. And they're going to get it, and they're going to check raise anyways if they have a set or if they have 3-4. So then you just look at it and you're like, well, what does the preflop raiser have that he's betting into, four people? And it's sort of interesting at the lower stakes because I feel like another thing that I've noticed during my challenge is that the lower you go, the people just don't have any clue about like why they're c betting. Meaning that like, no, if you were playing at a higher level game, I
Mm-hmm.
actually don't mind a raise against the preflop raiser on this board because I wouldn't expect really a whole lot of bet folds from the preflop raiser if they have something. You know what I mean? Because like
Mm-hmm.
you're
Yeah.
representing a very thin range and they should have something c betting into like four people. Now, if somebody
Mm-hmm.
else had bet, let's say that on you get this board and the pre-flop raiser checks and someone else bets, I think you're forced to call. You're forced to slow play
Mm-hmm.
against a field better once the pre-flop raiser checks. But against the pre-flop raiser, you can't go wrong with fast playing against a guy that
Mm-hmm.
you think has a hand. And the reason why you think he
Mm-hmm.
has a hand is because he's bet into four people. So I could see it at the higher
Mm-hmm.
levels. But sometimes these guys are just betting because they have no idea what they're doing. They're c betting like ace queen. I don't hate the
Mm-hmm.
play. Like on the surface, some people would be like, "How can you fast play like in this spot?" But I don't hate it. I might make it
Mm-hmm.
smaller. I don't know if you need to make it 140 if you were going to raise. I might make it like 85. Make your hand look like it's a jack, because then there are other
Mm-hmm.
people that will call with jacks. You know what I mean? Stuff like that. The preflop raiser will
Mm-hmm.
never fold. So I would just tend to make it smaller if I was going to raise. Sometimes call, but I don't. If you were going to fast play, it's okay against the preflop raiser. I think here is my point of view.
So you mean you will raise by 85, or you made it total of 85?
Um, I would make it 85 total. 85 to
Oh, okay,
100
okay.
total is what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you raised to
Yeah.
140.
So
Yeah.
yeah, I raised to 140.
Uh-huh.
Small blind folded.
Okay.
Big blind tanked for a while, the
Mhm.
aggro guy, and he decided to fold.
Okay.
and under the gun plus two fold. Cutoff was like kind of shocked, like how come it come to me, as if he was expecting somebody else to call.
Okay.
Then he thought for a while and decided to call.
Okay.
And the turn was seven of hearts.
So the pot is like what, 380, and you guys have what, like 320 left, something like that?
Exactly.
So the turn is the seven of hearts.
Yeah.
And right, and you don't have the jack of hearts because it's out there. I'm gonna put jack
Yeah.
of clubs, jack of spades. Okay.
So, and he checked.
Okay.
So when he checked, I was putting him on over pair or two pair kind of hand
Uh-huh.
or a flush draw. When he checked, I thought he might not be having hard draw. So I like tanked for a while and decided to jam. I'm not sure if like in retrospect if that was the right decision or not.
Well, it's weird because of the stack sizes. Like I said, I mean, the pot is what, 380 and you have 320 left. The other thing too is that I don't know at 1-3 how these guys react. Like, for example, if the cutoff had aces through queens, would he just jam on the flop more often than not?
No, he was the razor was like kind of he was 20 minutes into the game and he did not play any out of line play. But yeah, he was raising hands like a little bit loose, like kind of 7-6 off or king deuce off, king deuce suited kind of hands. But definitely he knew his playing position and stuff. So he did not play any out of line or anything.
Here's the thing that I don't like a jam here. I mean, obviously you can't bet fold because of this. You've got 320 left and the pot's 380. But I don't mind betting smaller. You might bet like 125 and then just call off to a check jam is sort of what I like a little bit better. Because if you bet 125, I know, yeah, he's getting a price of like 3.5, 4 to 1, but you can see the draw. Plus, sometimes the board's going to pair, and it's going to be, it's going to be, not going to be any good. So jamming, like I said, though, I don't know if a guy's folding an overpair anyways, but it seems like jamming sort of allows somebody to make some sort of hero fold with ace jack no heart, pocket queens no heart, because they're like, oh, well, this guy either had a set or he was raising on the come with a flush draw and now he got there. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
So what ended up happening?
So he showed king deuce of hearts and board didn't pair.
Yeah.
So I was like betting turn like 100 or 120 that you suggested. I was thinking that on river I will be so shallow that it will be hard to get fold from the lower club draw if he had a lower hard draw or over pair. I don't know, like.
Yeah, but if you bet really small though, you don't want folds from those hands though, right? You want those hands to call so that they can maybe make a curiosity call at the end. Do you see what I'm saying? It's a weird spot because of the stack sizes. You know what I'm saying? Like you're up against a probable one pair type of hand and some flushes, but what are you going to do? Check back the turn? You could check back the turn. I think it's probably pretty close. The lower the stakes, the more I like betting. And maybe the higher stakes, you sometimes balance this with a check back on turn when you have stack depth, I feel like. But thanks for the call. I appreciate it. That's an interesting one. Again, guys, I am in the live chat here as well. We've got a couple people here. We're going to go to 6 callers. Thank you for the warm words. Gosu Tricks. He says in the live chat, when assuming I would cancel after the 30-day free trial, but the material was so good, I stayed and subscribed. Thank you. By the way, if you use our code, the YouTube code, YTA200, it's actually 37 days you get for free. If you're totally new to the site on a new account, everyone gets a 7-day trial. And if you're using a free promo code, you actually get 30 days on top of that. So you get 37 days. Let's go to my buddy Chris Sigmund in Washington State / Oregon. What's up, Chris?
Peace. What's up, buddy?
Chris, have you ever said I have a 6 ace low in a high low game before?
Oh, Jesus. No.
So, if you ever go over to, I was trying to get across a point. I don't even know why I bother, but I was trying to get across a point. If anyone plays Omaha high low, I was trying to get across about sort of the etiquette and how high stakes players, announce their hands in Omaha high-low. Omaha high-low, even though it's sort of the same, poker's poker when you're playing a high-low game at 8 or better, it's all the same. But when you're playing stud high-low or you're playing Raz, you announce your hand from basically the top to the bottom. Like I have an 85 low, I have a 75 low, I have a 65 low. Um, and you do that
Right.
also in deuce too. But in Omaha 8, because the game uses community cards, you actually announce from the bottom up using your cards. So that was the little debate, and
Correct.
I put some, kind of sort of twisting type of board sort of read. Whenever there's more than 4 cards, 4 or more cards below an 8 in high-low in Omaha 8, it's a clusterfuck.
When
Um,
there's 5 cards that are
if
low,
there's
it is a
5 cards, it's
clusterfuck.
crazy. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
When there's
Four, it's like a live card or
yeah,
your own unique low. But yeah, you're
yeah,
right. When it's 3 cards, it's always the bottom up for sure.
yeah. All right, you got a hand first, Chris?
Um, yeah, I do. Let me ask you about your 5-5 there at Live at the Bike.
5-5 at Live at the Bike?
Yeah, I watched your last episode there. Is Nick? Would you consider Nick a spot?
You talking about the ante game?
Mm-hmm.
No, Nick is one of. Well, here's the thing. I mean, you look at it and I'm sure that he will admit this too. Nick is definitely one of the better players in that ante game. The way that Ryan has
Arranges it.
put that lineup together. But I mean,
Mm-hmm.
when he's playing on Fridays, though, he's probably one of the weaker players. But anybody would be one of the weaker players, though. That's not a top player. You know what I mean?
Right.
But his game has
What about
improved a
LG?
lot.
What about LG and Ken?
I can't. I mean, Chris, I can't. I can't. I mean,
Well,
if you
no.
want to talk privately, we can talk privately.
Well, that's fine. I was wondering because I was watching your play, and you're playing pretty solid, but you didn't try to cover any of those guys, and I was like, I wonder
Well,
if that's
that's an interesting question about covering. Well, LG ran it up, and I could have added more, but sometimes I find like it's easier to play against those guys because they're clicking so much buttons by sometimes actually being the equivalent of like 100 to 150 big blinds, so that you don't
Mm-hmm.
have to think about it too much. And obviously, like if I
Mm.
get deep, I get deep. But I mean, the only person that's sitting there that's super deep is like Nick. And a lot of times, people will sit deep, sort of to kind of dick wave, where they're not necessarily using their stack or getting some sort of crazy value from somebody. So, unless there was a huge spot that was super deep, I think it's a little bit easier to play shallow in that game. I might go with a little bit of a different strategy though, Chris. This week I'm going to play tomorrow night. It
Mm-hmm.
depends if I can get position on Big John, but I might actually play kind of more of a Chris type style pre-flop where I might be three betting some suited hands more in position.
Mm-hmm.
Because and just try to play some pots that even with maybe not even like the greatest of hands to get in spots with some of these guys, but we'll see. All right,
Yeah, yeah.
all right, you got a hand for us?
Okay, so I'm playing a mixed game, and I called Hold'em on my button because there was a spot 2 to my right, and so we're playing 5-10 Hold'em. We're about 3K effective, 7-handed,
Yep.
and the button straddles, small blind folds, the spot. He's an Asian reg, and he's pretty fishy. He calls in the big blind. Next guy folds, and I make it. I can't remember if it was 70 or 75 with ace 5 of hearts.
Are you under the gun?
No, small blind folds, big blind calls, the next guy folds, and then it's me. So under the gun +1, I guess.
Okay.
But we're only 7-handed, so, and there's a button straddle, so I guess that would be like low jack maybe.
And this is 5, 10, 20 with the 20 straddle. Is that right?
5-10 with a 20 button straddle, right?
Got it. Okay.
So,
So, yep, I got it up.
so big blind calls 20. I make it either 70 or 75 with ace 5 of hearts.
Okay. Mhm.
The button's pretty fit or fold post flop. He calls,
Okay.
and then the big blind calls the spot.
So 225-ish, right?
Let's say there's 225 in the middle.
Okay. Oh,
And we're 3K effective with the spot,
okay.
the Asian reg fish.
Mhm.
And the flop comes 8-5 deuce with the 8 deuce of hearts.
8 of hearts, deuce of hearts, 5x.
5 of spades.
Okay.
Yeah, 5 of spades.
So you flop the nut flush draw on a 5, right?
Right.
Yep.
Now the spot, he checks to me.
Okay.
And now, I'm playing so many mixed games. Am I betting to protect my pair of fives? Am I betting? Am I checking?
Well,
Like,
here's the thing. So, I haven't actually reviewed. So, Key just put up a video on Crush Live Poker, the latest Crush Live
hmm
Poker video that sort of addresses this. It's a little bit different, but, sort of a newer school thought sometimes in sort of advanced no limit is that you don't always have to bet to get better to fold and worse to call. You can sometimes use a board or a range advantage or a plan to barrel off to sometimes bet. Your hand has so much equity here. I would probably, I don't know what I would call it, like whether it be a value bet. I would bet small enough where I'm never going to get an 8 to fold. So it's sort of a value bet because your hand has so much equity and it sets up future barrels, whatever you want to call it. So if the pot's 225, I would be definitely betting small here to barrel off a lot of
hmm
cards, maybe like 75, something like that.
because an eight's never going to fold.
Well, you're not going to get, I mean, I guess you could make a case if you were to come out and pot the flop, a hand like sevens or sixes might fold, possibly. But yeah, you're not going to really get a better hand to fold here. But also, like, a lot of the draws you have absolutely crushed. So
Right.
you're just sort of building a pot up towards the nuts. And I love the texture because you can barrel off high blank cards that are in your range that actually don't fit your hand. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
it's a great sort of board.
Well, and the other thing is, I've been listening to a lot of DJAF, his new podcast,
Yeah.
and he kind of plays like you used to play, like put the fear of God in them on the flop, like so that they think they're going to play for their whole stack.
Well, I
Kind
usually
of the
do
way you
that with
used to play.
I usually do that with raises though. Sort of
Mm.
bullshit raises.
Mm-hmm.
Not necessarily like I don't think a whole lot of people fold to like one bet now, and that's why things have sort of turned around where you can sort of get away with small sizing because where you're starting to really put the fear of God into people is on the turn if you have overbets. You see what I'm saying? If you have
Mm-hmm.
overbetting in your game.
I see.
So what did you do here?
All right. I bet 200. I didn't even know why. I was like, 200. Like,
Yeah.
I just didn't know why. The button folds, and then the spot he calls.
All right. So the button folds and the big blind calls.
And now there's 625 in the pot.
See, this is why, like, I mean, it's weird though, because you're saying us. I'll just give you the theory behind it, right? Like, the spot. This is some of the stuff that Colin and I go over in top section. I mean, this probably doesn't apply to the spot, Chris. But what ends up happening here is if you bet large on the flop, you're not allowed to like bet a lot of turns. But if you
Because the
bet,
board doesn't fit my hand.
yeah, it's just like you're not allowed. It's supposedly like an optimal play to bet like a lot of turns. But if you start with a small sizing on the flop, then you can follow through with a lot of betting on the turn. So it's and when you're in position, it sort of shapes your hand. You see what I'm saying? But I
This
mean, if
is
the
even
guy's the
if I'm trying
spot,
to exploit this guy.
well,
Yeah.
I mean, if you're trying to exploit the guy, fine. But I mean, do you think you have the best hand here now?
I mean that's why. Yeah. I don't even know. Like when he calls, it's like fuck. Where am I?
Uh huh.
I mean, I guess that's why I'm calling in. Maybe my bet was too large then. But then again, if I bet 75, do I think I have the best hand?
Well,
And he
that does,
calls.
but I mean, you can decide whether or not you're going to barrel turns, though. I mean, and the other
I
funny thing
see.
is that even some of the wheel turns, you pick up additional equity. I mean,
Well, that's what came. That's what came on the turn. I got a three of clubs.
yeah. See, now I probably wouldn't bet here if I got checked to
Mm-hmm.
when you use the 200. Um, but if you had used the small sizing, you might be able to bet. I mean, it's probably close. You still might check back against. You don't have to bet every single card. But I mean, that's sort of the difference. It gives you more. It gives you sort of more. I don't want to get blown off my hand here either. You know what I mean?
No,
Like,
I don't want
yeah.
to get blown off my hand. In an exploitive sense, what do we think he's calling flop with? Like, there's probably some draws, and there's probably a lot of eights and a couple of pocket pairs.
Well, I mean, he could call with if he's super wide, right? He could have a five. He could. I mean, if he's really a
5-6,
spot,
5-4.
whatever. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
Is he playing like King Deuce of clubs? I mean, who knows? You know what I mean? But yeah, he could have a lot of
Yeah.
those hands. So he
Okay.
checks. What did you do?
Turns of three clubs. He
Yeah.
checks. I bet 400, and he calls.
I mean, I suppose See, this is the other thing too, Chris, is that if you bet 75 on the flop and he calls, you can use a lot of overbet sizing on turns, even on this turn probably. But now that you bet 200 and he calls, again, I'm not the best with all this stuff on the top of my head off of like what is sort of optimal, not that it even applies to this hand. I don't know if you can
Right.
overbet. And also too, 400 is a weird sizing. It's 2/3. It's not even an overbet. You know what I mean?
Right. It's like it looks like a value bet. Looks like a massive value bet.
I mean,
Even though
here's the
I
other
don't
thing
even know if
though.
I have the best hand.
I can get on board that your hand is okay because you have so much equity that you could sometimes make this bet and then check back river. Although if I were gonna bet, I would probably bet smaller because now I feel like when you
Mm-hmm.
bet 400 here and he calls, it's gonna be very hard for you to have the best hand unless he's really bad and he's still calling with like 5-6 things like that.
Right. And so there we go. Like the river is the 9 of clubs,
Yeah.
and he checks. Do I have to turn my 5 into a bluff?
If you have ace 5 here, you beat some of the fives, right? That he would call flop and turn
I
with,
do.
like 4-5 and 5-6. So unless you think that he's gonna like fold an 8,
Fold an 8.
I probably wouldn't. And then also too, he occasionally has something he might be slow playing like 6-7 that's gotten there or ace 4. I think your hand has too much showdown value to turn that into a bluff. Sort of
Mhm.
two in between.
Yeah, these tweeners, I just get kind of lost on nowadays in hold'em. It's odd.
Yeah. So what ended up
Well,
happening?
I checked.
Uh-huh.
I checked.
Yep.
He had queen jack of hearts.
Okay. Well, there you go. But you can see why
So
you don't have to turn your hand into a bluff, though, right? Because, like, if he's not going to fold an 8.
I can see the river play for sure.
Yeah, yeah.
The question is, like, on the flop and turn, it's like, he's never folding an 8, right?
I don't think so. Yeah.
So then I shouldn't be betting that large, right?
Again, the reason to be probably. I mean, it's a weird thing. Sometimes the thing that's sort of new to me that I've learned from some of this computer modeling is that in times when I used to think I don't want to get blown off my hand, like the times when you've got aces with the nut flush draw and then the heart comes in on the turn and you're like, well, I'll just check it back. The solvers say that you're supposed to bet the made hand and draw. Your hand is a little bit, so when you have something plus a draw, I think it has something to do with the equity in your hand plus like protection and folds. You're allowed to bet. Your hand, it's probably because you bet so large on the flop, you're not supposed to bet like that on the turn. But I mean, I don't hate it. I just think that I probably would do a fair amount of checking back on turn.
I kind of lucked into the max value, but
Yeah.
I just I feel like I click buttons, like.
Yeah.
Like,
So T Krupka on the live chat said if he can't fold an 8, you can't bet the turn. That's probably the exploit, to be honest with you.
Well, so then if I check the turn, does that mean I'm calling river if he bets?
Well, it depends on what
Or
the
am I
river
check
is.
folding?
Depends on what the river is. I mean, here's the thing.
River's a 9 of clubs.
I mean, here's the thing. If the river is a 9 of clubs and he came out and bet, I'd have a very, very hard time calling. I mean, you would have because you have the hearts, right? And a lot of things have gotten there. Ace 4, 4-6, 6-7, 2 pair. He would literally have to have another busted heart draw, and I don't think you'd have
Or
the correct
10-8,
pot
yeah.
odds. Well, yeah,
Yeah.
but he wouldn't bet 10-8 though at the end, right? If the river was a 9.
Oh, that's true. That's true. Yeah.
So you know what I mean? So it's like, see where the interesting parts would be like if the river was like something that might fit into your what people traditionally think of like your bet
Like a king,
check,
yeah.
like an offsuit king, and then Ali comes out and bets, and you're like, well, this guy's either has 2 pair plus or nothing, but I block the hearts. You know what I'm saying? Like, but with a 9, if he bets, I would just fold. So if I had played it that way and he bet the river, I would have lost the hand. But I think you follow what I'm talking about, though, right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
All right,
Hey,
Chris,
thanks, Bart.
you got it. All right, next caller, Dave in New Jersey.
Hey, Bart, how's it going?
What's up? How you doing?
Hey, Bart, good, and you?
Good.
Hey, you enjoying your 5-5 challenge?
Not really, to be perfectly honest with you, and I'll talk about it tomorrow on the podcast. I can't. I'm actually. It's kind of sad. I'll post up some results, but I think over 65 or 70 hours, I'm just about even. And then I just realized that like there was, I know I had said originally, well, I won't play anything but 5-5 except on Live at the Bike and Stones, but that doesn't really, when I'm thinking, now that I think of it, it doesn't make any sense for me to do that because, I mean, I do want to make money too. So I played in a 5-10-20 game with Jamie Gold on Saturday. By the way, I get more than enough material, like just from one 8-hour session. I mean, I could record like 10 podcasts right now over like 8 sessions. So, and the other thing though, too, Dave, is that like if I don't record a podcast right after a 5-5 session, even if I make detailed notes, it's not as good. If I do it a few days later on, just because maybe I don't remember some specific details. So we'll see.
I totally get that. This ends from a few weeks ago, so
Yeah.
it's
Okay.
yeah. So this weekend it's a lot fresher, right?
Yeah, exactly.
By the way, the WPC is at the Borgata this week, so Gary and David were in town. We got to play together.
Oh,
That
okay.
was a lot of fun.
Cool.
This is a 2-5.
Yep.
From 2 weeks ago. You mentioned one of the things in here and why I'm calling this in, so I'm real curious which direction you want to take this.
Okay.
But anyway, we'll start the hand and then you'll see where it goes.
Uh-huh.
Effective stack is 980, and that's the villain. Villain is a decent player.
Hold on 1 second, Dave. Let me just hold on 1 second, Dave. I just I screwed something up here. Let me I had forgotten to. That's too bad because some of those hands were good. All right. All right, Dave. So 2-5 1000 cap Borgata. Is that right?
Right.
Okay.
Villain's in the hijack, decent player.
Okay.
He opens for 20.
So
Calls, I call.
V1 in hijack opens. V1 opens for 20.
And he's been pretty frisky in late position.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Button calls. I call from the big blind with 8 of diamonds, 9 of diamonds.
So you close the action.
Correct.
Okay. And how deep are you guys?
1,000 I cover.
All right. Cool.
And I understand that different board textures, that could be a very bad suited connector.
Well, it can just give you the ass end against ace king. But I mean, the guy's opening from the hijack, so he's got more than just, a very, very tight range, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. The 60 in the middle, the flop comes out 10, jack 4, 2 clubs and a diamond. The 4 is the diamond.
Okay, so 10 of clubs, jack. So 10 of clubs, jack of clubs, 4 of diamonds, and you've got 8, 9 of diamonds, right?
Yes.
Okay.
I check.
Mm-hmm.
Villain bets 35. Button folds. I call. I don't think that's a good spot to check raise, but I wanted to kind of throw that question first here.
Actually, you know what? When you had sent me this hand and I had just looked over it sort of briefly, I do think that this is actually a good spot to check raise with your back, especially with the backdoor diamond draw, because you would clean out some of the reverse implied odds that you're a little bit concerned about. I don't think that he's going to bet call against you, Dave. I mean, you're a sort of an older guy, right? That's perceived to be tight. And you might even have a whole lot of fold equity against one pair types of hands here too. Like if he was to like bet, he might even get a lot. It depends on what your image is. I feel like I don't, sometimes we go back and forth with this, Dave, but I feel like you're going to get a lot of folds in that spot.
At this level, though, a lot of the field, if they have something like ace queen of clubs, they're just going to go with it.
Well, ace queen of clubs. I mean,
let's say any 2 overs with a draw.
Yeah,
combo.
But if you check raise and a guy jams, then you just fold. Whatever. What's the big deal?
Yeah.
I think you can take the bottom parts here of your straight draw, your open end straight draw, and check raise with backdoor diamonds. I do like a check raise here. But okay, you call.
Okay, so I call.
Yeah.
130 in the middle. The turn is the 3 diamonds.
Okay. See, I would have check raised and followed up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I check. Villain bets 110, and I raise a little on the small side to 300.
So, when the villain bets the flop and now bets the turn, and you check raise to 300, what do you think? So what do you think that he has, or what do you think that he's going to come off? Do you think that he's continuing to just barrel? He could be barreling ace king and ace queen again, like for two barrels.
He could be, since his flop bet was for him, I thought a little on the smaller side with that board texture
Uh-huh.
with two villains out there to him.
So you thought he was gonna
Yeah,
he was
well,
starting off with a small sort of sizing and then leading to a large sizing?
correct, which
Yeah.
made me think it was like a pair and a draw or a combo draw.
Hmm.
It doesn't. I don't think he's got over pair there. I don't think he's got two pair plus.
Well, I mean, this is interesting because we're actually going to be dealing with not exactly the same hand, but Jesse the suit's calling in next hand, and he's got I think a check raise turn spot here too with a picked up equity draw. Um, when you make it's interesting your sizing because you make it 300. So if he calls, the
Right.
pot's going to be like 700, and you've got what like. So you're planning on if he calls, are you planning on ripping a lot of blanks? And by the way, there aren't many blanks either
Correct. We
because
do find one of those.
because people have said that, well, why don't you make it 400 to 450? If you make it larger and the guy calls, I'm not sure if you're going to blast off on a blank because you're not. I mean, the pot's going to be huge and the guy might respond by jamming. So sometimes if you
Right.
check raise larger and a guy just wants to go with it, he might just go with it. And obviously you're going to be priced in. So, I mean, this is interesting. I would try to keep it balanced a little bit with what you were going to be doing for value if you had taken this with like a set of fours or something like that.
Right.
Also, I've made
The
overbets
suit,
here too. I've also check
the
raised and made
suit,
huge overbets here too, but sometimes those tend to look like draws. But I've done it with made
yeah.
hands, so
But I'm trying to make this look a lot like value rather than a draw. And if I did have a set of fours, I would have check raised flop.
yeah.
And I didn't check raise flop with this because I didn't think I have full equity there on a lot of the hands that he'd be in there with.
Yeah. So you make it 300.
Right. So I guess you don't mind so much that small sizing.
I don't. If
The
you're going to
river,
follow through, I don't mind it. I mean, I don't know if there's a difference between 300 here and like 400 in terms of if you were to make it a larger sizing and he had an overpair, would he come off of it versus you making it a smaller sizing and he's not? And then are you going to follow through? I mean, those are the questions that are going to be that I have to ask. If you're going to make this sizing and follow through with a bluff on some runouts, then fine. But if you're not, then I would like a little bit of a larger sizing and put him sort of in a tough spot.
Okay. Yeah, that was the plan. I thought if I did make it much more than, let's say 350,
Get
much more than 350.
awkward sizes, right?
Yeah, I don't really have enough to push him off on the river.
Yeah. So he calls.
He calls.
Yep.
River is a two of spades, which is about as pretty as you can get.
I mean,
guess.
you gotta go with your plan, I would think.
And that's the key question that I have here.
I mean, here's the thing. I mean, when you look back at this, and again, people have said, well, it depends on what type of player you're up against, because there's a theoretical issue here, is that if you're going to squeeze pocket jacks and pocket tens pre-flop to a hijack open and a button call, then you're repping very, very thin, meaning that you're repping like pocket fours. And yeah, you could close the action with Jack 10, but on a wet board like this, how often are you slow playing those hands? You're not really supposed to slow play from out of position that much on a wet board. So if the guy has card sense or he understands poker even to a certain level, which maybe 2-5 players don't, and they just look at you as an older guy, then
I did say that he was decent though, so I put him in that category.
Well, that's why I like a check raise more on the flop here, because if he's going to call down with a hand, like if I'm in the cutoff spot here, Dave, and I decide like, all right, well, I'm going to take a stand here against Dave, then you're not repping much. Do you see what I'm saying? Like you're not repping much by check raising turn if I think you fast play a lot of hands from out of position. You 3-bet tens and jacks pre-flop. And you do a fair. I mean, you're not really like check call, check raising Jack 10 or pocket fours. Then a lot of things have missed. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do.
So river's a deuce of spades.
Okay. Okay, so and the biggest question I had here was whether I was supposed to check raise the flop, but the
Yeah.
size on the river. And the reason why is you had mentioned it in, I think, your last podcast, maybe it was the last call-in show, and it came up a couple times from me talking to people in the regatta, is the perception of a value bet on the river versus a bluff.
Oh, that you can
And
sometimes get more fold equity by betting smaller, you mean?
yes,
Yeah.
yeah. I decided to bet 450 here for that reason. I didn't know if that was
So
good or
so
not.
so the pot has 7 and change, and you bet 450, but you have 600 left basically. So you could have either moved all in or bet 450. If you had moved all in, you would be betting like 600. Is that right? Something, or maybe
Well,
625.
Villain had the effective stack. He had about 175 left after the 450 bet.
Right. So 625. So you could either move all
Yeah.
in for 625 or bet 450. Is that what you're saying, basically?
Yeah. Yes.
I don't know in this spot. I don't know if it matters. I haven't necessarily grasped that. If it's true that 450 gets the same fold equity as 625, then yeah, bet 450. I don't know if that's the case in this spot. Obviously, you must
And
be
I don't
thinking
either.
about it.
Yeah, which is why the call.
Yeah.
Just a couple comments. This is not the same table, but the same weekend. I
Uh-huh.
was in a spot where I ended up folding aces, and the guy next to me said, "If you bet bigger, I bet you would have called that," as opposed to a 2/3 pot size bet in the river where I folded.
Yeah.
And
Maybe.
there was another comment from somebody else that suggested the same thing, where I think the field views that 2/3, 3/4 pot size more value-y
Uh-huh.
rather than, and the bluffs are the bigger ones. And anyway, I went with the
450.
450.
Okay, I can get on board.
He tanked for quite some time,
Mm-hmm.
and then said, I missed all my outs, but I still have a pair, and sometimes a pair is good here. And he asked, he says, "Is a pair good here?"
So he had like 4 or 5 of clubs or something, or like ace 3 of clubs.
He never showed. He ended up mucking.
Okay. Yeah. Well.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, that
But
makes a lot. I mean, that sort of makes sense. The double barrel and then the call to the check raise, and now obviously you end up. But I do think that this hand should be check raised on flop more, so that it demonstrates how we talked through the hand that you're not representing as thinly on the turn as well. You see what I'm saying?
Right. I do.
Yeah. All right, Dave.
And just as a trailer, what combos would be the best bluffs for that situation here? I assume non-club, 8-9 and queen king would be primary bluffs.
I don't know about king queen. Might be a call. King queen with a club in it maybe gets check raised, but I'm not overly concerned about sort of cleaning up the draw quite as much. You could check raise obviously some of your lower flush draws as well. Queen 9 of diamonds too. I mean, listen, I'm not the best
Right.
at necessarily picking combos off the top of my head, like some of those solver expert guys are. But just, I mean, my gut is that I check raise this flop with 8-9 of diamonds.
Okay.
All right, Dave, take it easy. Thanks
Thanks.
for the call.
Bye.
All right, 2 more callers. Jesse the Suit, what's up?
What's going on, Bart? How you doing today?
Jesse, I've been getting a couple of texts and DMs from people. Sometimes I think Poker Mentor sent me some stuff, something about Rob Farha's ass and cancer. And I don't know what's going on in low content Slack in CLP, but do I need to shut that channel down for a couple days? Do people need to cool off?
There's just one person who is causing problems. And he seems to have withdrawn from the field. Right now, everything's cool.
Oh, okay.
As long as he stays away or stays calm if he comes back. But yeah, suffice it to say, there's a guy who's obsessed with Rob Farhag's butt
Yeah.
and low content, which is a little weird. But
anyways,
what are you gonna do?
All right, you got a hand for us for MGM, right?
Yeah, no, everybody loves bluffs and 4-bet pots, so let's do that.
So is this a two? This is 2-5.
This is 2-5.
Okay.
So 2-5,
1,000
effective, and the villain is definitely a professional poker player.
Definitely a professional poker player. Okay.
one of these guys who has no job, so
Okay.
I'll call him a professional
Right.
poker player.
Right.
So it folds all the way around to the button.
Okay, folds the
He
button.
opens to 15.
Okay.
I am in the small blind with Jack 10 of diamonds, and I 3-bet to 65. I generally play 3-better folds, at least against people who I perceive to be competent when it's late versus the small blind.
To 65 to like just over 4x, right?
Yeah, I probably should have thrown an extra blind or two in there.
I think that's fine.
Small mistake.
Uh-huh.
In any event, he relatively quickly 4-bets to 150.
So already you're saying that
And,
you think he's like something might be going on here, per se.
Well, I think that he understands that we're both supposed to be wide here.
Uh-huh.
You know, 5-betting is crazy. Folding seems just too weak with a pretty strong suited Broadway.
Well,
getting a pretty good price.
He hasn't even made it 3x. Yeah, he hasn't even made it 3x. I mean, you have to call.
Yeah, 2.5x.
Yeah.
Exactly. You have to call.
No.
I mean,
the times that you wouldn't call here and occasionally run into it are just guys that just always have aces when they 4-bet, aces or kings, which you will find sometimes, which I've seen. But
yeah, he was like 1,000 years old.
Right.
They tend not to make it 150 anyway. They tend to make it like $1
$300.
million.
Right.
Yeah. Like fuck it. Like I don't want to get called. I just want to win.
Right.
So I call.
Mm-hmm.
Not much else to do. We get a reasonably good flop for Jack 10. It's King 9, 3. I think it's a brick.
King 9-3 rainbow.
Yeah.
With a 1 diamond.
King 9-3 rainbow with 1 diamond. So we've got a gut shot and some backdoor possibilities.
All right, I'm gonna put the 3 of diamonds
So I
out
check.
here.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
So I check, as I would do with 100% of my hands, and he bets 75.
Okay, so
which is,
check.
I assume,
75. 75, so obviously really small, right? 75 into 300.
Yeah, so I assume that he's range betting or something like that.
Well, I mean,
It's the only inference I could draw from a $75 bet.
he's probably. I would assume that he can bet much larger than that on a King 9-3 board if he's the 4-better pre-flop. It's not like 6, 7, 8. No, I know, and people are just these guys don't understand like what the different sizings are. But obviously, you're gonna call. You know what I mean? And I mean the thing is that you might. All right. Well, since you had already told me, we'll move on. We'll talk about the turn. So you make the call.
Yes, I toyed with raising. I think raising is definitely part of the strategy if you want to defeat these small bets, but I don't think this hand fits super well into that right at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
And it's still something I'm thinking about how exactly to do. So in any event, we get a pretty good turn. We get a 7 that puts out a backdoor flush draw.
Yep.
But not ours. It's 2 hearts.
Sorry, 2 hearts. Okay.
So
you turn a double gutter now, right? It's King 9-3 7.
Yeah, I turn a double gutter to an 8 and
right.
queen.
Right.
So I check again.
Yep.
And he bets 200. Now this is a difficult situation.
Uh-huh.
Because I have a lot of equity, but I can't really call.
Right.
Because I'll be first to act with a hand that has no showdown value.
Right.
If I brick.
Unless you hit a pair.
Unless I hit a pair or something, or I make my draw. Folding seems too weak, so that leaves the remaining option of check raise all in.
Well, yeah, and here's the thing. So there are times when this would be absolutely awful, and then there are times that this would be okay. And I think that this might be one of these times where it's okay, because this whole dynamic sounds like guys that are. Here's the thing, like. People that will let's say that he 4-bets small blind versus button at 1K effective with like queens plus and ace king. That's it, right?
Right.
But he's got way more 4-bet bluffs than he should be, right? Because he's like dick waving or he thinks he's like a 2-5 player, whatever. And then it's followed up by bet with this sizing. Well, now you throw queens out, right? So it's ace king.
That doesn't make any sense.
It's ace king, kings, and aces. None of those hands are going to fold, most likely, if you do check raise. But the question is he messy? And does he have too many
Right.
bluffs
Does
here?
he have too many
Yeah.
4-5 suited, 8-5 suited,
Just
whatever?
yeah, whatever. And now he's like, I'm gonna double barrel a disconnected card. It sounds to me like it's probably okay, but just don't do this as a normal thing against a normal 4-betting range at 2-5 is what, because I've played sloppy.
Against the normal 4-betting range,
Yeah.
I probably would have folded.
Right.
Like, oh, you have aces again.
Right. So I'm assuming you check jammed then, right?
Yeah, I check jam. I'm like, fuck it.
Yeah.
I think this guy's just getting out of line.
Right.
So I jam it in.
Yeah.
And he does not immediately call, which I find to be interesting.
Uh-huh.
So he tanks for a while. He gets a count on my stack.
By the way, the other thing too about this is that, I mean, again, it depends on how much you want to go down this rabbit hole, but you don't have hearts, which means that there's more of a chance that he has a heart in his hand, which is bad for him, supposedly, but
right.
I can't give this guy that credit. So he calls.
Well, interesting that you should mention it. So he calls.
Yeah. What do you have? Queen? Did he have like queen with a heart or king with a heart or something?
Oh, no. Oh, so much worse than that. He calls. I table my hand for jack high, like it runs out of low brick. And he tables ace-9 offsuit with the 9 of hearts.
What was the river?
Like an offsuit 5 or something.
Oh, so you missed. Yeah.
And he wins with a pair of 9.
So the river was a brick and...
the river was a brick and he tabled ace-9 off.
With the ace of hearts or the 9 of hearts?
With the 9 of hearts.
With the 9 of hearts, yeah. I mean, yeah, that's sort of strange. But I guess his hand...
I don't know what the turn bet was about.
Yeah, I mean his hand...
The turn call I sort of understand because he blocks 9.
Right, he blocks 9s and he blocks ace-king. So...
Right.
But then you have to sort of revert back to like, yeah, but how often is somebody check jamming in a 4-bet pot? And, you know, unless you're a total spaz, like the occasional hands that you have, like that are draws, actually still have decent equity against him too. You know what I mean?
Yeah, the bottom of my range is an open-ended straight draw with 2 overcards to his pair.
Yeah.
And like the top of it is like a set that has him dead.
Yeah.
Kind of a questionable call.
See, again,
but it's also questionable to bet middle pair.
Again, I think that people, I think that people and some people that comment on sort of, I don't know if this is going to make a video, it might, but people take this stuff way too far. They're thinking ahead of on a level when somebody might say, "Oh, this was a bad play because you're only representing 9s." It could be against a player like this if he understands that, but most of the people you're winning money from have no clue about what you're representing.
Right.
And the entire thing is just an exploit because they're based upon their own hand. So like somebody, I had made a social media Instagram post a couple days ago talking about attacking the field better on dynamic boards, and somebody said, "Oh, that's terrible advice. When you attack the field better on a dynamic board, you look like you're full of shit." But for 90% of the people that you're playing against at a $5 blind level on a 9-deuce-3 board, they're not thinking about what I'm representing and are going to hold on for a 200 big blind pot with 7-9 suited on a queen and a king run out. You know what I mean? Like it's their absolute value of their hand. So
right.
That is strange.
And you can go this way of saying like, well, if he understands that all I'm representing is 9s and he's a 9, that's a great blocker. But if he understands that, why is he double barreling middle pair in a 4-bet pot?
Well,
if he calls, I'm kind of screwed.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, he probably shouldn't. I mean, I guess he could bet small again for protection against some of your sort of suited broadways. You know what I mean? I don't know about the sizing is sort of odd. But obviously he's out of line, right, with his 4-bet.
Selection pre also.
Yeah. Obviously he's out of line in his 4-bet, but
it's a button. Why don't we click it?
Right. Thanks for the call, Jesse. Appreciate it.
No problem.
All right, last caller here. If I can get over here. Well, this episode has gone quite long. Where the hell did it go? All right, here we go. Dude from Europe.
You're gonna want to disconnect me.
Bye, Jesse. Kai. Kay? You're up.
Kai. It is.
How's it going?
Hey, Bart.
Good.
I'm calling from Germany.
Okay.
And I have a 2-5 hand.
Okay.
Well, it's 255, but it's basically the same.
Okay.
It's like what we play here in Germany.
Okay.
game is uncapped and it's 200 min.
Yep.
And villain 1 is, I think, 1200 effective, and villain 2 is 450 effective, and hero covers. Actually, hero is not myself, but a friend of me who was at the table,
Okay.
and I was also sitting at the table.
Okay.
So, V1 is like 30 years old. I've never seen him before. I guess he's a recreational player. I'm not really sure, but he doesn't seem like really good. He opens to 15, which is smaller than the usual open. Like usually people open to like 20, but I don't know. Maybe this guy like always opens to 15.
Okay. So he opens to
Um,
15 from what position?
from UTG2,
Okay.
and then there are like two calls, an MP and cutoff,
Mm-hmm.
and those two guys are like extremely bad. So like one guy,
Can you turn your
like when
do
I
you have
open
the
under,
ability to turn your mic down? Sounds like you're on a headset, right? Do you
uh,
have a gain or something?
wait a minute, is it possible like on the Uber app conference app here?
If
Uh,
you go over to settings, let's see. No, maybe not. I'm not sure. I don't know if you have like a gain. I mean, we can just deal with it, but
I mean, I can maybe like move away a bit if it's better.
all right, keep going. Go ahead.
Okay. All right. So both flat callers are pretty bad. Like at one point, I was opening under the gun, and one of the guys called Jack 8 offsuit, like under
Okay.
the gun too. And
Okay.
like at the end of the game, like he called 3 deuce offsuit even, and like they're probably playing like Ace X and like any suited like four gapper and stuff.
Okay.
So really wide. And hero is on the button with Ace 10 offsuit.
Okay.
And I think this is the first decision, like if we want to three bet or if we want to call. And I was discussing this hand with like friends of mine, and I think in this configuration, like with all the dead money and like the bad players, like we universally agreed that probably three betting is the best play.
Well,
Like,
okay, so if you get a lot of players in the middle that are V-pipping really high, then I can sort of get on board with three betting. You're not really supposed to be doing a lot of three betting with hands as bad as like ace deuce, ace 10 offsuit. If you're familiar with my material, the
yeah,
trend is really to three bet more suited hands with stack depth. But with that being said, yeah, I think that this is probably too good a spot not to three bet because of the V pipping of the bad players. It just gives you a really
yeah,
good price on an overlay. I mean, I don't think it's horrible to call, but obviously, like probably ace jack plus is definitely a three bet. You know what I mean? But
yeah,
okay,
sure.
so you call on the button.
Yeah, the interesting point is like we agreed that three betting is probably like the best play by far, and like a game theoretical thing which we later on discussed for a long time is like if we don't three bet like for some reason I don't know, like is it better to call or to fold? Because most of my friends said like if they wouldn't three bet in this spot, they would rather fold than call because like ace 10 plays really bad multi-way. We bleed chips by like value betting one time, getting two called in two spots and like have to give up and stuff. And whereas I was like thinking like we have absolute position, we have a huge edge and really wide ranges, like how can we have a fold? So I
Yeah,
don't
I mean,
know.
I tend to agree with you. Like, if your friends think that ace 10 offsuit would be a fold instead of a call, so they wouldn't complete getting like a price in the big blind with it. I mean, the only reason for to sometimes think about folding here as not being as good as or as the big blind being in a better spot than you on the button is if the blinds were going to be very squeeze happy and you're not closing pre-flop action. But if you were going to call big blind ace 10 offsuit, how can you not call button? I think a lot of people don't understand that. Like, yeah, you get a slightly better price, but you're getting a
Yeah.
pretty good price now, though. And what I mean by that is that 15 with two calls, so that's 45, right? Plus the blinds. You're calling 15 to win like 50 or 55. That happens all the time in the big blind. And I bet you your friends wouldn't fold ace 10 off in the big blind, multi way,
Yeah, sure.
right? So by my calculation, the pot is 60, right?
Yeah, it's like 65 with the blinds.
Okay. So let's go to the flop.
Right. So the flop is ace 10-8 with 10-8 of clubs.
Ace of clubs, 10 of ace X.
Ace of something, like let's say ace of diamonds.
All right, so your friend has top two basically, right?
Right. And ace X of clubs is possible, which is probably pretty important. And we don't have the ace of clubs,
Right,
which is also important.
right.
So UTG2 C bets 30 into 65.
Who's
First
is
caller
the pre-flop
folds.
raiser, right? The guy who's
Right.
he's the 450 effective one, or he's 1200 effective?
No. The pre-flop raiser is the 1200 effective one.
Okay, so V1 bet C bets how much again?
30.
30. Okay.
MP folds, cutoff calls. Cutoff is V2 with like 450 effective.
Okay,
One of
so
the bad players.
V2 calls and cutoff. Okay.
And hero raises to 110, which is probably, well, it's not probably, it's in my opinion, it's too small. We should have made it like 130 probably.
Okay, so it's pre-flop raiser bets 30 into 60. It's ace 10 8 with two clubs. V2 calls in the cutoff, leaving himself with 400. Button makes it 130. It's a little bit small. I would want to get some more money in here at this stack depth, but okay. So button makes it 110, and then do they both call?
Yeah, they both call.
All right, both call.
So pot is like roughly under 400. It's like 395, I think.
Okay.
And turn is an offsuit 3, so it changes nothing.
Okay.
And it checks to hero, who bets 310. So is this maybe too large? I don't know.
Well,
It's pretty hefty sizing.
I probably would have gone larger on the flop, like what you had said. But if he thinks that the guy is going to continue to call because he has a big ace from up front, then I don't really have that much of a problem with it. I mean, I would tend to go maybe like 275, but I certainly wouldn't put in a small bet here. That's for sure.
Yeah, sure.
Because a 3 doesn't change anything, right? A 3 is an absolute blank here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they're probably like ace 10-8 with two-tone has like many draws, like queen jack of clubs or like jack 9 or something. And like if he has like ace king, he's probably calling any bet, like if it's not an all-in. So.
Well, yeah, and this is what's going to lead to an interesting river, I know, because you had sent me this before. So what happens here? You bet 310, or your buddy bets 310.
V1 calls.
Okay.
And V2 folds.
All right, so the short stack is out, right?
Yeah, and now the interesting thing is V1 checks dark.
Checks.
Which is,
that's interesting.
I think pretty interesting because we don't see that often, and I don't know if we can draw some conclusions on his range if he checks dark.
So the pot is like 1,000, and you guys have like 800 left ish, something like that, right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
750, I think.
So the UTG raiser who c-bet the flop and called your friend's raise and called the big turn bet has now checked the river dark. And what's the river?
River is the 3 of clubs, so it brings in the front of flush draw and pairs to the 3.
So the final board is ace of hearts, 10 of clubs, 8 of clubs, 3 of, I'm going to say, spades. River's the 3 of clubs. So the front door flush comes in, but the guy checked blind and you have ace 10. And what was interesting, what I felt, so now the guy checks blind. The question is, should your friend value bet or not, right?
Right.
So
and also like if you value bet like which sizing is the best, because I think all in is too large. In my opinion.
I like a small value bet here of 300 to 400. I mean, it's interesting that little quirk about that he checks blind because he can't really check raise here. I mean, you're with ace 10. First of all, like you're going to hear from a set on the turn. You block most of the set, so he can't even check raise here really with like a flush. So you're never going to get blown off, or you should. Or if I bet 300 or 400 and the guy jammed, I would call because it would be impossible for him to do that with any hand. Like I might expect him to have like, you know, king queen with a club or ace king with a king of clubs, and he was trying to do something cute. You know what I'm saying? Like you should never get check raised here at the end. The way that this goes out with that blocker with ace 10 and the guy basically probably putting in money on the turn with a set, so you don't have to worry about that. But I would tend to go maybe small here, 300 to 400. And the interesting thing here is if we look at the board, there are just simply more ace queens ace kings and ace jacks, then there are going to be Broadway like club draws. That's how I looked at it, right? Like king queen of clubs, king jack of
Yeah.
clubs, queen jack of clubs. That's three combinations, right? King queen, king jack, and queen jack's three combinations. Maybe jack nine of clubs is four, and then maybe some ace x of clubs.
Yeah,
Um,
that's like I think Ace X of clubs was like the part which where I was like mostly worried about, because he has some kind of showdown value, but he has a strong draw which like gets in on the river. So I thought, is it possible like that he dark checks like Ace X of clubs, and maybe would he check raise it all in on the river? So
I'm not scared
like
of. I mean, I think that's a horrible play to dark check ace x of clubs. You know what I'm saying? Because it is a
okay,
draw, right? It is a draw
yeah.
that's, chances are that the ace isn't good, but I still think you go for value here and you try to get called by like ace king, ace queen. Um, I mean, hell, I made a really sort of nitty check back at Stones after the show that I'm going to bring up on the podcast that ended up being correct that I posted up in the forums. But I think with the pot being 1,000, I might bet 300 to 400, and I just don't expect to be check raised really here ever. I guess now that I think of it, if you get check raised, would you ever check raise ace x of clubs? That would sort of suck. And then I might just actually now I might just revert back to saying that people just never have a bluff here, because the thing is that
Yeah.
like you can't. It's not like the board didn't pair. Like it would be suicidal to turn like a hand like ace king with the king of clubs and check raise that all in as a bluff because the board's paired. So if someone's got a set of eights, um, or possibly tens that wasn't three bet, I mean those hands are full now. It's different than like if the river was like, you know, the five of clubs or something like that. So what ended up happening? What did your buddy do?
He checked back pretty quickly
Yep.
and won the hand.
So he
Yeah.
never saw what the guy had.
No, because in most casinos in Germany, it's like last aggression shows first, so he
So
had
what
to
did
show
you think?
first.
Do you think it's a value bet?
Yeah, like right after the hand, like he turned over ace 10, and I was like, is this not like a little bit too nitty? So like my intuition was like to value bets probably like 275 to like 300.
Yeah.
I think 400 is like pretty big because like
Yeah, actually, I'm going to
like I
take
don't know
back
this
what I say.
guy.
I like that. I'm going to take back what I say. If you can bet 275, 300, and then fold, I didn't. It it didn't click in my head that the guy could have ace x of clubs. Um,
Yeah.
so I'm going to take that back. But I still don't expect to get check raised all that much. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But
Like probably like a dark check is like more of indicating like a showdown value type of hand, so more like ace king, ace queen, I guess.
yeah, no, I agree.
Yeah.
Thanks for the call. Appreciate it.
All right. Thank you.
All right, guys. That's gonna wrap it up for us. We've been here for quite some time here. Usually we don't go that long. Again, if you're new to the site, check out Crush Live Poker. You can get 37 days free by using the promo code YTA 200. And we'll be back here next week when the Patriots are Super Bowl, 53 champions. So thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.